Iranians rallied in the streets of Tehran after a call by the exiled crown prince, leading to nationwide internet and phone outages.
French President Emmanuel Macron accuses the US of breaking free from international rules and gradually turning away from some of its allies.
Almost 200 new plants and fungi were named new to science last year.
Iranians rallied in the streets of the capital Tehran Thursday night after a call by the country's exiled crown prince for a mass demonstration. Internet access and telephone lines in Iran cut out immediately after, in a new escalation of the protests that have spread nationwide across the Islamic Republic. Cloudflare, an internet firm, and the advocacy group NetBlocks reported the internet outage, both attributing it to Iranian government interference.
و قطعا توجه کردید که ازدحام جمعیت باعث میشه که نیروها پس بروند و امکان ریزش رو به سمت شما بیشتر میکنن. بنابراین مهم استش که این انضباط و گستردگی رو حفظ بکنیم. من اولین فراخوان خود را امروز با شما در میان میگذارم و از شما دعوت میکنم که این جمعه و پنجشنبه 18 و 19 دی ماه را سر ساعت 8 شب همگی چه در خیابان‌ها یا حتی از منازل خودتون شروع به شعار سر دادن بکنید. در نتیجه بازخورد این حرکت‌ها من فراخوان‌های بعدی رو به شما اعلام خواهم کرد.
The protest represented the first test of whether the Iranian public could be swayed by Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, whose fatally ill father fled Iran just before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Iranian officials appeared to be taking the planned protests seriously. The hardline Kayhan newspaper published a video online claiming security forces would use drones to identify those taking part.
French President Emmanuel Macron has accused the US of breaking free from international rules and gradually turning away from some of its allies amid a geopolitical world changing for the worse. In his annual address to French ambassadors, Macron explained,
Nous sommes dans un monde qui se dérègle. Les instances du multilatéralisme fonctionnent de moins en moins bien. Nous évoluons dans un monde de grande puissance avec une vraie tentation de se partager le monde. Les États-Unis sont une puissance établie mais qui se détourne progressivement de certains de ses alliés et s'affranchit de règles internationales qu'elle promouvait encore récemment, qu'il s'agisse du commerce, de certains éléments de sécurité ou de certaines enceintes.
Macron's comments come after a string of strongly worded statements by the Trump administration which have alarmed many of Washington's staunchest allies. Chief among them is U.S. President Donald Trump's escalating rhetoric regarding the annexation of Greenland, the world's largest island and part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Trump has long floated the idea of purchasing the island, which lies mostly in the Arctic Circle, citing its strategic location and saying it was vital for U.S. national security. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order suspending Washington's participation in dozens of UN agencies, commissions and advisory panels focused on climate, labor, migration, and other issues his administration describes as promoting so-called work initiatives. This means the U.S. will withdraw from 66 international organizations, including the UN Climate Treaty Framework, marking the most extensive retreat from global cooperation in U.S. modern history. According to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the institutions were redundant in their scope, mismanaged, wasteful, and poorly run. Rubio also described the agency's interest as a threat to U.S. sovereignty. The withdrawal leaves the U.S. as the only country outside the global climate framework. It also comes as Trump rattles allies and adversaries with military actions. Trump, who calls climate change a hoax, withdrew from the Paris Agreement shortly after returning to the White House.
Protests erupted in Minneapolis on Thursday after the killing of a woman by a federal immigration officer taking part in the Trump administration's latest crackdown.
Like you just saw.
37-year-old Renee Good was shot at point-blank range as she apparently tried to drive away from agents that had approached her car. Protesters demanded that ICE leave the city, a call echoed by Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem doubled down on the Trump administration's statement the ICE officer acted in self-defense, a claim disputed by Minneapolis officials and undermined by video footage captured of the incident. Walz demanded that Minnesota authorities be allowed to take part in the investigation after they said they had been barred from participating.
Yes, I saw the video. Yes, I saw that. But a thorough investigation will see what happened before that. It will take all factors in, and it will come up with a fair and just conclusion. And we will accept that. Very, very difficult for Minnesotans to think in any way this is going to be fair when Kristi Noem was judge, jury, and basically executioner yesterday. That's very, very difficult to think that they were going to be fair.
Noem said the FBI would investigate, claiming the state had no jurisdiction.
The French researcher Laurent Vinatier is back in France after being imprisoned in Russia since June 2024. This release is the result of a prisoner exchange with a Russian basketball player. Daniil Kazatkin was the subject of an American arrest warrant. He was arrested at a Paris airport. The Russian player was suspected of having been involved in ransomware attacks on some 900 companies, including 2 U.S. federal institutions. Our compatriot Laurent Vinatier is free, the French President Emmanuel Macron announced on X, stating that the researcher was already on French soil. The head of state expressed his gratitude to our diplomatic agents for their mobilization. Laurent Vinatier, a researcher specializing in the former Soviet bloc, was arrested while he was working for the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue. The Swiss NGO mediates in conflicts outside official diplomatic channels, particularly in Ukraine. Laurent Vinatier was accused of not having registered as a foreign agent. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Last August, the Moscow court opened new proceedings, this time for espionage, a charge punishable by 20 years imprisonment.
The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, have travelled to Amman to deepen ties with Jordan and to pledge additional financial support to the country they see as a cornerstone of regional stability. Talks with King Abdullah II focused on the course of the Syrian political transition and on Gaza, as the EU ambitions to play a bigger role as a stabilizing force in the region.
The situation in the Middle East, in particular in Gaza, and the West Bank have been at the heart of our regular exchanges, also here today. Together with Jordan and other partners, the European Union has offered to support new Palestinian internal security forces to restore order and governance in Gaza.
Brussels also wants to deepen cooperation with Jordan on migration, with a focus on Syrians returning home. The EU has already pledged a €3 billion package to support Jordan in areas such as defense and migration. In addition, an investment conference has been announced for April.
Belgian Migration Minister Annelien van Bossut has told Euronews that the EU should use development aid as a strategic tool to increase migrant returns. Belgium is already implementing this tit-for-tat approach, when in discussion with third countries it ties funding, as well as visa policies, to cooperation on migration policy. Belgium justifies this because many irregular migrants ignore orders to leave.
Only 1 in 5 people who have to return to their home country returns. So what do we do at national level? We have decided that we will have a whole of government approach. So what do we mean by that? It's that we will relate development aid with the way in which the countries of origin take back their nationals.
So they have to take back in order to receive development aid?
For example, indeed, also visa policy can be linked to it.
Van Bossert believes, however, that to increase the impact of such moves, European support is vital. As part of its proposals for the EU's 2028-2034 budget, the Commission wants to make development aid conditional on recipient countries cooperating with Brussels' migration policies, including by accepting people ordered to return.
I'm convinced of the fact that if we would do that at European level, we have much more leverage towards the countries of origin to use, and that's why we really need this European cooperation.
And do you see political appetite amongst your European counterparts for this?
Of course, we see that spirits are changing also at European level.
The approach has been criticised as undermining development goals. Policy experts and NGOs point out that this very aid helps reduce migration by improving the quality of life in countries of origin, and warned that the move could damage the EU's credibility in regions where Russia and China have gained an important foothold.
Almost 200 new plants and fungi were named new to science last year. Conservationists warn that many are already threatened with extinction. The Royal Botanic Gardens in London has revealed its top 10 species that were described in 2025. A killer fungus found in the Atlantic rainforest of Brazil has become quite popular because of the series The Last of Us, in which a fungus turns humans into zombies, this researcher says.
It's just that in nature, in real life, this fungus has the capacity of infecting insects and basically controlling their nervous system and then effectively making them zombies, right? So this new species we found, as it happens, it parasitizes spiders, what we call trapdoor spiders.
This new species found in Ecuador, known as blood-stained orchid, is remarkable for its way of achieving pollination and reproduction.
This flower imitates a female fly, so it makes the male fly think that it's a female, and then the fly comes and copulates with it.
Other species that made it to the top 10 include the fire demon flower, a critically endangered snowdrop, and the caterpillar orchids.